Okay, sir, we are all set. Good to go.
Okay. Well, good afternoon. Welcome to the 584th Board Meeting of the California Regional Water Quality Control Board, Central Valley Region. I'm Mark Bradford, the Chair of the Central Valley Board. I will introduce the other board members in just a minute. For people who want to listen or watch the meeting online, the board's customary webcast is available. We are receiving presentations and public comments here at the meeting and online through a Zoom meeting platform. If you're here at the meeting and intend to present or comment, or think you might be interested in commenting, you should have filled out a speaker comment card. It's a blue card. If you're online and planning on commenting, you should already be in the Zoom meeting room using the meeting ID and password provided by board staff. If you have not already received this information, you can email us now at agenda5@waterboards.ca.gov. That email address is agenda followed by the number 5 with no space @waterboards.ca.gov. Include speaker comment in the subject line so we can follow up with you. For those in the Zoom meeting, you will be on mute and your camera turned off until it is your turn to speak. Our meeting host will then unmute you and ask you to turn on your camera if you have one. When you're done speaking and the board members have completed asking questions, you will be placed on mute and your camera turned off. I will now introduce the other board members as follows. Denise Cadera from Allensworth on my left here. Raji Brar from Bakersfield is joining us virtually. Sean Yang, of Sacramento. Nick Ovdis, also of Sacramento. Elena Lee Reeder of Sacramento. And again, I am Mark Bradford, also from Sacramento. State Board member Nicole Morgan is participating in this meeting and will give an update to the board a little later. I will now introduce Executive Officer Patrick Kalupa, who will introduce his staff.
Good morning, Chair, members, or good afternoon, Chair, members of the board. I first want to extend my thanks to the State Water Board for letting us use their facilities, and apologies in advance for any technical difficulties that we may be having or have. This is the first time we're using this room, and because our particular boardroom is currently undergoing an update. We have our computer system being upgraded in our boardroom to handle new Zoom capabilities. So we hope to be back in Rancho Cordova in February, broadcasting from our typical home office. But let me go forward and introduce the staff and management that we have here today. To my immediate right is Jessica Yar, Senior Staff Counsel for the board. Immediately in front of me is Mindy Maxwell, Executive Assistant, and she's been helping orchestrate this whole meeting, so much thanks goes out to her. Immediately in front of me at the opposing dais is Adam Lapitz, Assistant Executive Officer, JJ Baum, Assistant Executive Officer, Chris Moskal, Counsel to the board, and Lori Oken, Counsel to the board. In the audience, we also have Clint Snyder, the Assistant Executive Officer in the Reading office, and Clay Rogers, Assistant Executive Officer, who runs the Fresno office. And I see Amel Wadwani as well, Assistant Chief Counsel with the Office of Chief Counsel, and a number of other staff. Again, thanks to everybody for joining us here today. And with that, back to you, Mark.
Thanks, Patrick. We're going to go ahead with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Denise has agreed to lead us in that pledge.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Okay, agenda item 2, we're going to ask board members for any communications regarding their activities the last couple of months. If there have been any. Okay, we have Nick raising his hand.
Yes, on November 14th, I attended a tour in Madera County hosted by Sustainable Conservation.
Helena.
On October 24th, I participated in the Environmental Justice Consortium for implementation. And on October 27th, I attended the Water Quality Coordinating Committee meeting.
Thank you. Denise.
On the 19th of October, I joined the State Water Board regarding the Racial Equity Action Plan. And the 24th of October, I participated in the Environmental Justice meeting. On the 27th and 28th, I attended the WQCC. November 3rd, I participated in the State Water Board Water Drought webinar. On the 15th and 29th of November, I participated at the invitation of the California Natural Resources Agency. I participated in the Native Heritage Month webinars. They were all quite interesting. And then the 6th of December, I participated in the San Joaquin Clean Water Advocate Training, working with disadvantaged communities and helping them better understand how to meander their way through the water issues that are prevalent in disadvantaged communities. And that's all I have for today. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Denise. I attended the Northern California Water Association Fall Mixer on the 20th of October. And then also attended the WQCC meetings on the 27th and 28th, and a few phone calls with the other chairs. And that's it for me. Is there anybody else? Raji?
I
You
don't
look
have any
enormous.
announcements. I've been getting text messages saying that I look larger than life. Normally I would appreciate that, but today it's a bit jarring. Even when I logged on and saw myself, I was taken aback. But I just want to say hello to everyone, my fellow board members, staff, and everyone that's watching via Zoom. Believe me, I did not request this big screen, but here we are. So hello, everyone.
You look great, so thanks for joining us. All right. We're going to move to agenda item 3, which is the State Water Board Liaison update. And I'm going to call on Nicole Morgan, who's coming up to speak to us to give us her update.
So good afternoon, Chair Bradford and members of the board. Happy to be here this afternoon to provide you an update. I'm on a different side of the dais as usual. And Raji, I was on that big screen yesterday. I feel for you. So this is a very interesting perspective from this side here. Let's see here, a lot going on. On December 7th, this past Tuesday, the state board readopted the prohibited wasteful water use as emergency regulation for water conservation. And then also on December 6th, we adopted the proposed general order for sanitary sewer system general order. That was a reissuance. We had held a public workshop, staff did, on November 14th to provide interested parties an overview of the proposed general order, including the revisions in response to public comments. And so then we adopted that reissuance on the 6th. And so just want to, thank you all for your staff's participation and working through that reissuance and, their input. On, let's see, hydrology and urban conservation update. So going back to September, it's been a little while since I've given an update. So looking at statewide water use, it dropped in September by 10.9% relative to September 2020, with a 4.6 cumulative savings from July 2021 to September 2022. So looking at the Sacramento River Basin, that was a savings of 10.5%, and San Joaquin River 4.2%. So now if we take a look at the next month in October, we saw a savings go from September of 10.9% to October of 12.5%, with the cumulative savings going from 4.6% to 5.2%. And then the Sacramento River, so in September, the savings was 10.5. However, it dropped to 8.9 in October. San Joaquin River watershed increased from 4.2 to 8.3, so that was almost a double increase for the San Joaquin River. So, as you know, we're still considered in drought, even though we've had, beginning in November, we had a great rain event. Beginning in December, also great rain. We're still not out of drought, so we're still asking everyone, please do your part and conserve. The savings, overall with the state, we are seeing that trend upwards. We just don't want to lose sight of the overall goal of conserving that 15% that the governor called for. So in August, the governor issued the California Water Supply Strategy. So we just wanted to make sure that we are providing updates on the implementation of the strategy as we move along. And so the strategy, just to refresh memories, established new 2030 and 2040 goals for water conservation, the production and use of recycled water, brackish groundwater, and seawater desalination, and stormwater capture, and use as well as specific implementation actions. So set a goal of recycled water and reuse of at least 800,000 acre feet by 2030 and 1.8 million acre feet by 2040. In January, this coming January 2023, so the state board staff will convene a recycled water strike team that will be tasked identifying, resolve permitting, and funding obstacles for recycled water projects. State board staff have initiated planning to develop a public digital dashboard to track the permitting and funding status of recycled water projects. The strategy also set a goal of desalinating at least 28,000 acre feet by 2030 and 84,000 acre feet by 2040. Staff will convene a seawater desalination interagency group on a monthly or bi-monthly basis, which consists of many agencies, including the State Water Board, several of the regional boards, California Ocean Protection Council, the California Coastal Commission, State Lands, Fish and Game, Natural Resource Agency, Department of Water Resources, Coastal Conservancy, and others. The water supply strategy set a goal to capture 250 acre feet of stormwater by 2030 and 500,000 acre feet by 2040. The state board is developing a request for proposals for a project that will provide an estimate of the volume of stormwater currently captured and used statewide and anticipated to execute a contract for this work in early 2024. For the implementation steps associated with groundwater storage goals, the Division of Water Rights permitting staff have prioritized groundwater recharge projects, continue coordinating with the Department of Water Resources on temporary groundwater recharge permits, and have requested staff resources to help regulations for water availability analysis associated with water rights permits. For the implementation steps associated with water rights modernization goals, water rights staff are quickly filling new positions, developing contracts for real-time water data collection and supply and demand models and tools, actively implementing and enforcing current emergency curtailment regulations, and selecting a vendor for the water right data system rebuild. It's called the Upward Project, which is updating water rights data for California. In addition, the water rights strategy established goals for efficient water use and conservation. On October 19th, the state board adopted new water loss performance standards for urban retail water suppliers. The regulation is set to come into effect on April 2023, and it's estimated that will save about 88,000 acre feet of water per year by requiring suppliers to monitor and reduce leakage from their distribution systems. The performance standards for water loss are one component of the overall conservation framework established by Senate Bill 606 and Assembly Bill 1668 in 2018, which is also known as the Making Conservation a Way of Life in California legislation. On October 28th, the Department of Water Resources delivered the full report on the recommendation urban water use efficiency to the State Water Board, which were required by SB 606 and AB 1668. We then held a public workshop at our board meeting to hear from DWR on those reports to further understand those. Our staff are now taking a look at them, and then we'll start the regulatory process to set outdoor standards. So that concludes my report this month. Are there any questions?
No, I don't have a question, but the last chair's call, Joaquin and Eric Oppenheimer especially led us through some of he called it Water Rights 101. And I was pretty overwhelmed by how complicated just the surface of that topic is. It was amazing. This wasn't that amazing. No need a bell to go off. But I appreciate the governor's initiative on the water supply strategy, and having all the long-term goals established gives us something to shoot for. So it's good to hear you making some progress on implementing that approach.
I just want to say thanks so much. It does feel odd being in, I think, your chair up here, but I really do extend my thanks and want to affirm our board's commitment to helping the State Water Board achieve the targets under the water supply strategy. I know we're going to have a discussion later on about the priority projects for each of our water quality programs, and many of them are engaged in thinking through issues related to reporting on recycled water use, to trying to expedite those projects that can increase recycled water use, even to brackish desalination that may occur consistent with the salinity control program. I think it really represents a pivot in California's thinking about its water portfolio on the whole. And I know our staff, we're all here for it. I think the line staff are on the forefront of all of these particularly vexing water quality issues in the Central Valley, and the supply strategy really dovetails quite well with a lot of the work that they're already doing.
Good to see you, Nicole. We haven't been in a building before we met up. I think we did have our last meeting, in October? In Reading? You were there, or you on the screen?
I was on the screen and
Okay, so
ready.
that's what I mean. But it's good to see you, and thank you very much for the update and all that Patrick said. That's where we are right about now with the information from the governor's office and trying to move things forward and support the state with the water supply strategy. It's definitely on our program. Thank you so much.
Thank you again, Nicole.
Hey, thank you. I will see you all in 2023.
Hey, look forward to it. Okay, moving on to the next item. Mindy, has anyone submitted a request to speak on any topic which is not on the agenda today?
I have a Martha Armis Kelly with the Catholic Charities Diocese of Stockton's Environmental Justice Program, Debbie Mackey with the Central Valley Clean Water Association, and Juan Camacho with Caltrans, but they all have indicated they will raise their hand if they wish to speak.
Okay, thank you. The next item is the executive officer's report. Prior to each meeting, the executive officer works with the executive assistant and the board's program managers. Wait, one more thing.
No, just real quick, I'm just trying to get a double check from IT that nobody has digitally raised their hand.
That is correct, Patrick. No
Thanks so
hands are
much.
raised.
Okay.
First hybrid meeting. These are
Right,
fun.
yeah, I can't see any hands, but that doesn't mean they aren't up there somewhere.
And Mark, we actually have a large slate of awards, which are fantastic to
great.
do. But I would propose going to the uncontested calendar first, since I know we have a couple members
Okay,
online and in person waiting for their items to
Sure.
go. So that would be item, possibly item 6 and 7 before we go loop back around to item 5.
yeah, we can go through 6 real quickly here. That's just consideration of the minutes from the prior board meeting from 13-14 October 2022. Are there any edits or corrections to the October minutes? If not, I'll ask for a motion to approve in a second.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Nick and seconded by Elena. Mindy, you do a roll call?
Board Member Yang.
Aye.
Board Member Abdus.
Aye.
Board Member Brewer.
I believe I have to abstain. I wasn't at that meeting.
Board Member Lee Reader.
Aye.
Vice Chair Kadara.
Yes.
And Chair Bradford.
Yes. Okay, agenda item 7. Still have no hands raised, I assume. This is the uncontested calendar. It's a time and place for a public hearing to consider uncontested items 11 through 15. Mindy, has anyone submitted a request to comment on any of the uncontested items?
No, I do not have anybody.
Are there any late revisions?
No late revisions.
And,
Can
again,
we make one addition to this? Item 8 is also uncontested.
oh, okay. We'll add item 8 and 11 through 15.
Correct.
Right, so we'll close the hearing and I ask for a motion to approve the uncontested calendar.
I'll move to approve the consent calendar
And item 8.
and item 8.
Item 8, yes.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Elena and Denise has seconded. Mindy, or do the roll call?
Board Member Yang.
Aye.
Board Member Abdus.
Aye.
Board Member Brewer.
Yes.
Board Member Lee Reader.
Aye.
Vice Chair Kadara.
Yes.
And Chair Bradford.
Yes. Patrick, do you want to go back now and do the,
That works for me.
okay, let's
Absolutely.
do it. So back
Thanks
to
for your
the,
flexibility. I know
yeah, no problem.
there are a few people waiting with bated breath to see if their permits get adopted, and
Okay.
they were just adopted.
All right, so this is the executive officer's report. The executive officer works with the executive assistant and the board's program managers to compile a report on the status of the board's programs and its staffing and many different initiatives the board is working on. At this time, the executive officer is available to take questions on this report.
Well, this is the time to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Denise?
I just had one question on page 64 for personnel.
Yes.
And I noticed, and I don't remember if we talked about this in Reading or not, but the 14 vacancies in the Rancho Cordova office, the 12 in Fresno and the 4 in Reading. What kind of impact is that having on the staff right now?
I think what you've been seeing at the regional board is what you've been seeing in a lot in the private sector, where there's a lot of churn. There's a lot of people leaving. We recently at the executive team yesterday, we were discussing some of the departures and some of the additions to our team. We're actively recruiting every one of those vacancies and working to fill those vacancies as quickly as possible. I think with all the retirements that we're seeing, and not just in the water boards, but in other agencies, the expansion of other programs. We've recently had 4 staff leave for Department of Water Resources because of new positions that were created in Department of Water Resources. We're recruiting and we have had people leave from State Board coming to us. So what you're seeing right there is frankly a relatively large vacancy pool, but it's smaller than the other regions in terms of the overall percentage. We're really working very, very hard to recruit. I think my message to the managers is if there are rough times ahead for the state, you don't want to be caught flat-footed with vacant chairs because those vacant chairs quickly disappear whenever there's a budget crunch going on. So we are trying our very best to fill all those positions as expeditiously as possible. And I think, you know, a lot of credit goes out to Kelly's team, which has really been on the ball in terms of helping get those positions recruited. We recently had a new addition to our team, Maria, who you may have met as a manager working right under Kelly to help with that process and to also ensure that the equity principles that we're working with as an agency and as a state are met as we go out there and recruit, you know, as diverse set of candidates as we possibly can. So we look at that number a lot, especially as we're heading into a potential recession, and try and get those positions filled as quickly as possible and just keep that as low as possible. But in terms of, you know, overall numbers, that's not that unusual to have that many vacancies for an organization of 300 some.
So the workload, all the staff, they're doubling up and working and serving in whatever capacity they can to make sure everything is moving.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we expect to have a certain number of vacancies just because of people retiring and choosing other options with their job and seeking other promotions. And every once in a while, it breaks my heart moving out of state. You know, it's for cheaper housing and things like that, which happens every once in a while. But you know, the vacancy numbers aren't really that off kilter, thankfully. That's kind of just where it is for an organization like ours. But we aim for a 0. We try and get that number down as low as possible because every vacancy is as you note is somebody else doing that work.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like the workload is built up around that number of vacancies.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thanks, Patrick.
I've got a number of staff awards to hand out both in person and virtually. But I'll also note for the rest of the board, Mark, Denise, and I, with a number of the management team and Mindy, who works very hard to compile this executive officer's report, we sat down and had a very thorough review of what we do with the executive officer's report and to make sure it's still responsive to the needs. And we're going to be slimming down certain portions of it that aren't used all that much and that aren't as meaningful, and in the hopes of trying to get, you know, make sure that everything that we publish, everything that we put out there is readable and accessible. And sometimes a 64, 65 page report isn't the easiest for the public to digest. So cutting it down a little bit, I think we'll have some benefit in terms of communicating what we do day in, day out. And with that, I'm all set to hand out some awards.
Yeah, do those awards. I would just add that the executive officer report, we talked about this, it just serves as a really good historical record of what transpired, you know, over the course of the year. So it's valuable from that perspective as well.
And I think the main shifts, to be honest, the main shift is to keep the stuff that is a little bit, I don't want to say repetitive, but some of the performance targets that actually don't convey what we do. There's actually dashboards that are even better at doing that have been set up online. And some of the looks like a horse race and some of the compliance between us and the other regional boards actually doesn't fulfill that great of a purpose because we count things differently. I wish it weren't the case, but we do. So dialing back some of those and adding some links instead of this document to things that are a little bit more up to date for that stuff while maintaining all the written stuff that's so important, say like the CV salts write-up of how many drinking water wells have been tested, things like that absolutely need to stay in the executive officer's report because this is part of the official board's records. But the other stuff that's kind of changing, you know, how many NPDES targets do we have for the first quarter and whether that's adequate progress. There's actually some cool dashboards that are out there that can help track that information a little better and tell a better story to both the board members and to the public. So really good conversation with that. I will start. I see Jesse out there. I don't know if Danya's out there as well, virtually or not. Set to go.
Danya, you can unmute if you like.
Oh, okay. I appreciate your conversation, Gene, because usually we have the Zoom up in front of us when we're all virtual. Here, I have no idea who's on the Zoom, who's watching, and who's there. So,
Sure. Danya's
so
here.
Danya, glad to know that you are virtually there.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Fantastic. And you may have recall Danya and Jessica from some of the work that they've done as part of the wastewater septic conversion program under SB 1215. Really tremendous amount of work that's being done by the Central Valley Water Board. And Jesse was a huge part of that, even though we've transitioned into a management position in another part of the office, part of the churn that board member Vice Chair Kadara mentioned. But it gives me great pleasure to present this award, which is a Sustained Superior Accomplishment Award, the SSAA. That's the highest award that we give out for truly remarkable performance over a long period of time to Danya Jimerson and Jessica Mullane for the wastewater consolidation program. After the wastewater consolidation program was adopted by the legislature in Senate Bill 1215, Danya Jimerson and Jessica Mullane from the Rancho Cordova office took on this important project to identify and assist disadvantaged communities connect with local sewer service providers. Danya and Jessica faced a seemingly insurmountable goal of eliminating literally thousands of failing on-site wastewater systems that represent a serious threat to drinking water resources here in the Central Valley. Region 5 was tasked with implementing this new program with no blueprint other than the legislation and general goals established by the Division of Water Quality. Danya and Jessica began by developing a program charter, working with other water board divisions, reaching out to the regulated community to communicate the goals and benefits of this important mandate. Then COVID happened. Without missing a step, Danya and Jessica navigated a path forward, working with various water board programs such as CV Salts, the OTS, LAMPS, the On-Site Wastewater Treatment System and local area management plans, and SAFER, Safe and Affordable Fund for Safe Drinking Water, to identify and prioritize connecting qualified disadvantaged communities and local sewer service providers. From day one, the amount of work Danya and Jessica have put into their research, coordination, and facilitation efforts is staggering. Their efforts are paying off as we are now seeing a steady stream of disadvantaged communities throughout the Central Valley and elsewhere motivated to abandon their antiquated wastewater systems. Danya and Jessica's sustained dedication and diligence exemplifies the Water Board's commitment to protecting water quality and serving the greater community. It is for these reasons Danya and Jessica are deserving of recognition and of this award. It's truly remarkable the work that they accomplished together. I will say this program, not only COVID happened, but with COVID came a complete repositioning of the financial resources that were available to this program. I think it was kind of founded with the idea of $60 million at most kind of coming into it. And with the COVID and the budget surplus, all of a sudden there was more like hundreds of millions of dollars being talked about for these wastewater systems. Ordinarily, that would have broken a tiny little program. Danya and Jessica were able to kind of pivot that. They've even recently made presentations to other boards throughout the state to talk about the success stories that we've accomplished here in the Central Valley. So truly, truly rewarding work that you've done. My commendation to you, and it gives me great pleasure to present this award here today. So much. I think I didn't quite plan for it. There are certificates down there. It's interesting. I think this is the first time I'm at a dais where there's actually a barrier between us and the public. If you want to take a picture, we can take a picture at the end after I don't know how many other people are here in person, but hopefully we can take a picture after we've presented a couple more awards. Right. Next up, and Jean, if you could double check that Marissa is online, Marissa Basenko. All right, I see a thumbs up from Bob Chow in the back.
Yes, she is able to unmute.
Hi.
Fantastic.
There you are. Hi, Marissa.
Hello.
New boardroom. I didn't even see you behind me, Danya. Good to see you. And there's Marissa. The Central Valley Water Board's Reading Office Management Team is pleased to select Marissa Basenko for the Superior Accomplishment Award. Marissa is an Associate Government Program Analyst, or AGPA, in the Reading office and is being recognized for her outstanding performance. Marissa joined the Central Valley Water Board as an office technician in March of 2020 and has worked as an AGPA in the Reading Cannabis Unit since July of 2021. Not only has Marissa proven to be an excellent project manager, she has developed a solid understanding of the Cannabis General Order and enforcement activities within the program. Marissa was tasked with developing an enforcement tracker so that the program could more effectively meet required deadlines and move projects through the progressive enforcement process. The enforcement tracker is now being used by staff on a daily basis to manage cases. Marissa then took on revisions to the cannabis webpage and worked with the program manager, staff, and the IT department to ensure that it was properly updated and all documents were either ADA compliant or removed from the website. Marissa has taken on management of the outreach side of the cannabis program as well, holding regular coordination meetings to discuss content with fellow staff and optimize the slide decks to succinctly deliver messaging to dischargers and to consultants. She developed topic-based modules to be presented seasonally and in sync with the requirements of the Cannabis General Order and the cultivator's growing season. These modules have been requested by program managers in other regions to assist in their outreach efforts. Marissa has done an excellent job tracking metrics for the program manager and generating the required reports. Marissa comes to work every day with a great attitude and is kind and considerate to her fellow staff and managers. We want to thank Marissa for being such a valuable member of the cannabis program, the Reading office, and the region. Marissa, congratulations. I know, frankly, those modules that were created under Marissa's supervision, truly exceptional, truly informative, and really kind of at the cutting edge of what the board needs to be doing. And Marissa really stands shoulder to shoulder with a lot of the engineers and geologists and scientists, and does absolutely outstanding work in this program. It's truly a big credit to the region, the work that she's done. So congratulations. My pleasure to present this award to you. I love the paintings in the background. All right. There's a whole bunch more. Believe
Yeah,
it or
I thought you
not.
had.
We're going to keep going with this. The next up is a Superior Accomplishment Award to Matt Boone, Kate Berger, Lynn Coster, David Durrett, Stacy Gotham, Griffin Perea, and Jason Schroeder. A whole bunch of people. I don't think we can fit them all into one screen, but I think most of them are available on the Zoom call right now.
Great.
There's Jason.
We see you.
All right, fantastic. This award is being presented to the Reading Office Management Team. The Reading's Office Management Team is receiving the Superior Accomplishment Award for their dedication and adaptability responding to the COVID-19 pandemic and ensuing emergency telework protocols. The COVID-19 pandemic caused unprecedented disruption to the daily lives of people worldwide and resulted in far-reaching effects. Providing extra care for loved ones, handling daycare and school closures, and navigating a multitude of business and service disruptions were only a few of the challenges faced by many. Starting in March of 2020 and extending through August 2022, those efforts were compounded by the implementation of the Water Board's emergency telework program requirements. Through all of this, the management team in the Reading office was steadfast in their commitment to the public, their staff, and the agency's mission. They worked tirelessly to ensure staff had the flexibility they needed to balance personal responsibilities while meeting program obligations, quickly adapted to the electronic communication styles, developed electronic document production processes necessary to guarantee timely issuance of agency correspondence, accommodated mandatory contact tracing requirements and travel restrictions, found ways to safely conduct site inspections, motivated staff by finding creative ways to collaborate remotely, and coordinated closely to ensure that there was an adequate office coverage at all times during the emergency. Throughout the pandemic, this team proved, just as it had during prior years' wildfire emergencies, to be highly capable and adaptable. This Superior Accomplishment Award is being presented in recognition of the selfless dedication, selflessness, and positive attitude each member of the Reading's office management team exhibited throughout that most challenging time, and to extend thanks and appreciation for their continued contributions to the board's mission. And I will say, kind of as a personal note, the question comes in why the Reading team is being specifically recognized as managers for their sustaining during the COVID-19 pandemic. And really, it has everything to do with the fact that the Reading office had challenges that other offices didn't have. That required, because it's the smallest office in responding to a lot of emergency situations, every single one of these managers basically showed up to work every single day during the pandemic, while most of the other managers had to adapt in their own ways and had challenges of their own. The Reading office was still, their managers were still showing up each and every day during the pandemic in what can be a challenging climate to show up to work every day. So a lot of credit that they bring to the region. They face challenges that were unique based on how their office is situated. And so it's my pleasure to give this award to the management team in the Reading office. Congratulations. Two more. Is Cameron there? Is Cameron available?
Hi, Cameron, you can unmute if you like.
Hello.
All right. Cameron has been working in the Fresno office handling the surface water ambient monitoring program swamp duties for 3 years. Recently, he has led the efforts to collect harmful algal bloom and recreational beneficial use assessments from Eastman and Hensley Lakes, Lake Cahuilla, and the San Joaquin and Kings Rivers. Cameron also provided a prompt response to an inquiry from the public about the recent presence of algal blooms in surface water in Three Rivers. He has also provided training and guidance to the Three Rivers Community Service District to collect samples at the Slick Rock Recreation Area at Lake Cahuilla. His training duties also included training the San Joaquin River Conservancy on how to collect cyanobacteria samples at Sycamore Island in the San Joaquin River. Cameron also assists with scheduling the swamp's scientific aids for both field sampling and data analysis. Cameron is a great asset to the Fresno office's swamp program and is very dependable. He works independently with minimal oversight and limited resources of the program. He prioritizes his monitoring efforts and data analysis efficiently to evaluate the physical, chemical, and biological integrity of the state's waters. Congratulations, Cameron. Swamp is a program that we rarely see in front of the board. But there is an incredible amount of public interface that they have with citizen scientists in particular. There's a lot of expertise that we have within our sampling programs that we can lend and really kind of are the forward face for detecting harmful algal blooms like what Cameron does and for training citizen scientists, including citizen scientists from disadvantaged communities. That's really the core of the swamp's work. And so Congratulations, Cameron, on this award and for being such a positive representation of the board's work to the outside world.
Thank you.
And last up, the award is being presented to Meredith Howard, Selena Cole, and Andrew Hamilton. I see Selena and Andrew, I believe, are both here. Good to see you. And Meredith as well. Andrew Hamilton, Selena Cole, and Meredith Howard are being recognized for their collective efforts on the Delta Regional Monitoring Program, a high priority program for the Central Valley Water Board. The Delta Regional Monitoring Program, or Delta RMP, is a complex program that involves numerous and diverse permittees that provide funding to the program in lieu of compliance monitoring. The Central Valley Water Board determined that funding for ambient water monitoring efforts could be used more efficiently and effectively while also providing a better understanding of water quality conditions in the Delta if those funds were used for a coordinated regional ambient monitoring effort rather than to continue to be used in individual uncoordinated ambient water quality monitoring programs. Selena Cole and Meredith Howard are both highly valued members of the planning section at the Central Valley Water Board. Selena Cole is an environmental scientist and is a technical lead and staff and quality assurance representative for the Delta RMP. Meredith Howard is an environmental program manager and the section head for planning, as well as the program manager for basin planning, TMDL, and Delta programs. She is also the steering committee co-chair of the Delta RMP. Together, they attentively oversee all the Delta RMP components and manage the many elements of the program that are instrumental to the success of the program. In 2020, Meredith formed and led a subcommittee of the steering committee to address issues identified by Delta RMP participants from both regulatory agencies and regulated communities. The outcome of this subcommittee was a plan to revise the program and governance structure that culminated in Board Resolution R5 2021-0054. You may remember that really was a wholesale restructuring of the Delta RMP governance, which approved the new governance structure and newly formed nonprofit organization to implement the program. Selena is a hardworking team member who takes on every project with enthusiasm, initiative, and great attention to detail. She uses her experience and technical knowledge to provide sound recommendations and develop efficient processes, even when complex challenges arise. She's often called upon by board staff and RMP stakeholders for her knowledge and perspective of the Delta RMP. Meredith and Selena have worked diligently with RMP participants, both the regulated and regulatory entities, to implement the new program structure and direction from the board resolution. Their leadership skills combined with critical thinking have been an essential asset to the successful implementation of the program and to address the many complexities of the Delta RMP. And I'm not forgetting Andrew. Andrew's actually a senior environmental scientist working with the State Water Board's Office of Information Management and Analysis. Andrew is the State Water Resources Control Board's Quality Assurance Officer and provides the final approval of the quality assurance project plans for the Delta RMP. Andrew's technical expertise in quality assurance and his collaborative approach working with the Central Valley Water Board staff and management has been critical to improve the quality assurance aspects of this program. Andrew handles his role in the Delta RMP with great poise and professionalism. Many of the successes of the Delta RMP are due to his thoughtful recommendations and his dedication to his role as the quality assurance officer. We are fortunate to have Andrew, Selena, and Meredith working on the Central Valley Water Board's Delta RMP. They are well deserving of the superior accomplishment recognition and are true champions for implementing the Water Board's mission. My congratulations go out to all three of you for this award. We'll do the pictures now. And I do want to note that, one of the challenges with the Delta RMP, its big brother, I suppose, older sibling is the Bay Area RMP, which is much better resourced for a variety of reasons. They've got a lot of deeper pockets in the Bay RMP. And so managing the Delta RMP with a much more limited budget and with a lot more resource constraints and still delivering high quality data to analyze the Delta water quality issues, really a testament to the team that's working on it. It's a lot of tough conversations that they have with regulated entities and other regulators to make sure that this program is working well. So my congratulations to the three of you on this award. So.
Love hearing all those stories about the staff success. That's great. Thanks, Patrick, and thanks to all of you who received a reward. Very impressive. I think since we included agenda item 8 in the uncontested calendar, we're moving on to agenda item 9. And that's the consideration of the regional racial equity resolution and 2023-24 program priority projects. At this time, the board will consider adoption of a resolution affirming the Central Valley Water Board's commitment to State Water Board Resolution number 2021-0050, resolution condemning racism, xenophobia, bigotry, and racial injustice, and strengthening commitment to racial equity, diversity, inclusion, access, and anti-racism. Included with the presentation by board staff will be a discussion of proposed priority projects for the board's water quality programs, which were developed to achieve the proposed racial equity goals. Following the staff presentation, interested persons will be allowed 3 minutes each to address the board.
And I'm going to have to ask for 2 minutes to
Yep.
walk around because I was anticipating that there'd be an easier way to get down there. I'm giving this presentation along with
Okay.
the racial equity team. We'll probably be needing those spots right up front to give this presentation.
Why don't we take a 5-minute bio break? And I don't think you can get there in 2 minutes anyway.
There is
You
a
had,
maze
you
back
had a
there.
sore foot.
There
Okay.
is a maze back there,
There
I'll tell
is.
you.
Okay, thank you. We'll just be back in about 5 minutes.
Thanks again.
That's smart.
Hey, Gene, I saw there were about 25 on the YouTube.
Let's see. 18 currently.
Great, thanks. Great job.
I can start that presentation anytime.
Okay, I think we're all back. So whenever you're ready, Patrick.
I'm all set. And Gene, I think you can put the presentation up on the screen.
There you go.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Gene. Chair Bradford, members of the board, I really take a lot of pride in this project. I take a lot of pride in this project in no small part because I will be sharing this presentation here today with members of our regional racial equity team who will be introducing themselves as we kind of get to their portions of the presentation. But I want to say that we have been taking racial equity and racial equity concerns very seriously here at the Water Board for many years, even kind of prior to the more recent 2020 racial awakening is what it's generally being called here. Working on racial equity issues, working on environmental justice has kind of always been central to the Water Board's mission. And certainly we have members of this board, namely Denise Kadara, who's kind of dedicated so much of her life to racial justice and racial equity issues here in the Central Valley. And I think motivated by that, we began this initiative a little bit before the State Water Board's efforts picked up. But really, kind of a lot of credit goes out to this team and the presentation that we'll give here today about the work that they've done working with program managers to come up with the resolution that's before you today and the priority projects that they've developed in collaboration with the program managers. So just as a lead off, I really want to thank this team. This is really a joint effort that you see here today. And with that, slide 2. And apologies for any technical issues. Again, this is kind of the first time we're doing it in this room, in this format after the pandemic. So there may be glitches. I want to share with you a little bit about our portfolio management process, which essentially informs why we are doing this here in December and the time frame that the water quality programs operate under. As you know, we have 19 water quality programs, each of which has an assigned program manager and an assigned executive sponsor. The program manager is a manager within the program, usually a supervisor who is responsible for putting together a work plan that lays out the objectives for the coming year. Each staff person in the program should be able to pick up the annual work plan and understand not only the primary objectives of the program, but also what is expected of them and how their work furthers the mission of the Central Valley Water Board. These work plans are developed on an annual cycle, which starts in December. That's why we're here today, where the board sets the priority projects for each program. And if you could click it, Gene. In most years, the program managers set aside resources to work on a project or projects that furthers the strategic objectives of the program. Here's an example of a hypothetical program which has set aside time for staff to work on a general order as a priority project, while still fulfilling the core workload of writing individual permits, enforcement, and administrative tasks like onboarding and training new staff. The program manager here in this pie chart that you see has proposed dedicating staff hours to working on a new general order because general orders, while they are a large workload, help streamline future permitting efforts and help standardize permitting across the region. Click. In some years, core work can consume all of a program's time. This is true when we have resource cutbacks or when staff in one program area are diverted to other work. In these years, we may not have a priority project for that program, which is absolutely okay as well. I just want to kind of highlight what we're doing here and the distinction between core work and priority projects. Next click. So today we're going to be talking about each program's proposed priority projects alongside of our racial equity resolution, because each of the programs has proposed this year to dedicate staff time to priority projects that further the board's strategic efforts to advance racial equity. So I'll pause for just a minute. I know that's a lot of administrative stuff to handle, so just pause for a minute. Good. All right. Next slide, if you could, Jean. So as background, starting in the summer of 2020, the State Water Board began an effort to address the historical effects of institutional racism by directing staff to develop a priority plan of action. A Water Board's wide racial equity team was convened and held public and employee listening sessions to help develop a draft resolution for the State Board. In November of 2021, the State Board adopted that resolution with the name that you see up there, often called the State Racial Equity Resolution. This resolution affirmed the State Water Board's commitment to racial equity and directed staff to undertake a variety of actions, including the development of a racial equity action plan, which the racial equity team right now at the State Board, we actually have a member that's working on it, is working on developing and anticipates having that approved by the State Water Board in 2023. The water boards are working towards a future, and this is kind of the stated goal, where race no longer predicts access to or quality of water resources. Race is not only not a predictor of professional outcomes for our employees, and the boards apply a racial equity lens to decision-making processes throughout the organization. Next slide, Jean. Efforts at the regional board to address racial equity issues began formally in 2019. As one of the most diverse regions in the state and faced with enormous challenges related to legacy water quality contamination in disadvantaged communities and communities of color, we began racial equity trainings for senior managers in 2019. As statewide efforts gained momentum in the fall of 2020, staff of the Central Valley made significant contributions to the state racial equity team. Central Valley Water Board staff continue to make contributions to this effort. Following the adoption of the state racial equity resolution, the Central Valley convened a racial equity team, folks that you see here today, focused on developing a regional racial equity resolution. Over the course of 2022, this team met with the program managers throughout the region to develop actionable goals for each of the water quality programs to help advance racial equity. The Central Valley Water Board, in adopting the proposed resolution that's before you today, would affirm and endorse the State Water Board resolution in its entirety. It would also adopt racial equity goals for each and every one of the water quality programs. This will be an obligation that we believe will be shared by all staff, managers, the board's executive team, and certainly by the board members themselves as we march forward under the racial equity resolution. And with that, I will turn it over to Marisol, one of our members of the racial equity team, for the next slide. Next slide, Jean.
Good afternoon, Chair Bradford, members of the board. My name is Marisol Gonzalez, and I work in the Reading office with the MPDS unit. I have been with the region for almost 6 years, about 4 years with the cannabis unit, and now 2 years with the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination Systems unit. I'm going to discuss SMARTY goals. One key to developing the goals for the programs was to try our best to develop SMARTY goals. SMARTY is an acronym which stands for strategic, measurable, ambitious, realistic, time-bound, inclusive, and equitable. By incorporating equity and inclusion components to SMART goals, we placed additional emphasis on ensuring that our commitment to racial equity and inclusion is anchored by tangible and actionable steps. There are two concepts that will be brought up a few times as we walk through the program goals. A newly updated tool called Cal EnviroScreen 4.0 and a new piece of legislation called AB 2108. I will discuss those on the next few slides. Next slide, please. Cal EnviroScreen is an innovative tool primarily developed by Cal EPA's Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, or OEHA. The most recent version of Cal EnviroScreen 4.0 uses 21 indicators covering pollutant sources and drivers of vulnerability within California's approximately 8,000 census tracts. This tool, which is publicly accessible, can be used to gauge overall environmental burdens in communities in unincorporated areas throughout the state, and incorporates demographic and socioeconomic data into the maps. Next slide, please. Next, I will discuss AB 2108. AB 2108 is something else that will be affecting how our board tackles environmental justice issues throughout the region. This is a newly adopted law that takes effect on January 1st. It imposes many new requirements for the regional board related to environmental justice and tribal issues. First, there are new outreach requirements for planning, policy, and permitting processes. These require the board to identify issues of environmental justices, and these processes develop, and this should begin as soon as possible in these processes. Secondly, new requirements must be made for every basin planning action, general order, and any order with a compliance time schedule, which includes each one of the permits that must be updated in the coming years to implement the nitrate control program under CB salts. Next slide, please. Lastly, before we begin with the substance of this presentation, I'd like to point out where all the priority projects will be located on our website. You can see the website on the presentation. You can see the program overviews, resources dedicated to these programs, as well as their accomplishments here. We will now go through a program-by-program review of our water quality programs, giving you a brief summary of the work that they do, the racial equity goals or goals that are proposed in the resolution, and the priority projects that are being proposed by the program managers for the fiscal year 23-24. I'll now turn this presentation over to Adriana Ross, who will begin with the board's administrative program.
I think you're still on mute, Adriana. Try again.
I just
Does
have to
she need
stop
to
the
be
share for a
unmuted?
second. Adriana, you may unmute now.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Bradford and members of the board. My
Next
name is
slide,
Adriana
Jean.
Ross, and I am the Environmental Justice Engagement Coordinator. Recently, I have taken over as a tribal coordinator for a region in the Fresno office, and I've been at the Water Board for 10 months, and I'm delighted to be here. I will begin this part of the presentation with the administrative program. The regional board employs over 250 permanent employees and 40 temporary or part-time employees. Of those staff, 18 serve as administrative section team. The administrative support program provides administrative support for the entire region, and it is responsible for a wide range of activities, from budget projection and tracking to contract development and management, to various human resources, recruitment, and retention duties. Next slide, please. Thank you. The Central Valley Water Board Administrative Program is the program most directly responsible for the region's efforts to create a more diverse workforce through recruitment, retention, and advancement. There are actually 4 racial equity goals for the administrative program. First, and most important, the administrative program will coordinate with the State Water Board on the development and implementation of the Racial Equity Work Plan. This is key to increasing diversity in our workforce and to increase our capacity to conduct culturally relative outreach. Second, as we work to adopt to a new hybrid work environment, the administrative program will make sure that whatever our future physical work environment looks like, it will ensure that space will be available to facilitate affinity groups and individual staff persons' religions and cultural practices. The administrative program will also facilitate training and education of managerial staff, conducting interviews with focus on implicit bias and equity considerations. Lastly, the administrative program will continue ongoing racial equity training and development for staff and leadership. Click, please. Thank you. Some of those goals are actually considered core work, so priority projects are not being proposed for them. Instead, they will be included in the administrative program's annual work plan as core work. However, both the coordination with the State Water Board on the racial equity work plan and the workspace reorganization would separately be considered priority projects for the administrative program. Next slide, please. Next comes the basin planning program. Water quality control plans or basin plans provide the foundation for all Central Valley Water Board regulation actions. The TMDL program also falls within the Greater Basin Planning Program, as do aspects of the CV Salts program and the Delta program. The planning program establishes policies to preserve and enhance water quality and protects beneficial uses and conducts a triennial review every 3 years to ensure that the basin plans address public concerns and continue to be effective in meeting the program's goals. Next slide, please. Thank you. The basin planning program has 2 racial equity goals. First, we propose that the planning program continues to prioritize the designation of tribal beneficial uses. Second, we propose that as part of the triennial review process, we develop a project to update the basin plans to add references to Cal EnviroScreen and state racial equity resolution. Click, please. Thank you. The prioritization of tribal beneficial uses is considered one of the planning program's priority projects. While the new triennial review projects will be folded into the core work that comes along with the triennial review, other priority projects for fiscal year 23-24 for the planning program include working on a scientific peer review for Delta Mercury controlled program and associated with the methyl mercury total maximum daily loads, TMDL, and the completion of the pyrethroid research plan that is a component of controlled program for the pyrethroid pesticide discharge. So now here's Sue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adriana. Good afternoon, Chair Bradford, Vice Chair Kadara, and members of the board. My name is Sue Makano, and I work in the Rancho Cordova office overseeing our region's irrigated lands program. And I've worked for the board for a few decades now. I'll continue with the waste discharge to land program, which primarily regulates waste discharges that have the potential to affect groundwater quality. This is California's oldest water quality program, regulating sewage treatment and food processing facilities, as well as other industries discharging non-hazardous waste. The program currently regulates over 1,400 facilities and accomplishes its work by expediting issuance of new and revised permits, finding unpermitted dischargers, and developing new general orders. It is one of the main programs that implements the CV Salts requirements. Next slide, please. The racial equity goal for the waste discharge to land program is the formation of a work group to meet the requirements of Assembly Bill 2108 which Marisol just described earlier. And one of those components is developing appropriate new findings for future general orders and permits. This work will begin immediately since that law takes effect on January 1st. Click, please. So this is the top priority for the Waste Discharge to Land program. Other priority projects include starting to enroll facilities under a mid-size wastewater treatment plant general order and the development of general orders for the nut and seed drying operations and food processors. And then last but not least, the program will be involved in implementation of CV-SALT requirements, particularly those related to updating permits to implement the nitrate control program in priority 1 areas. Next slide, please. So next is the CV-SALT program. CV-SALT, as you know, stands for the Central Valley Salinity Alternatives for Long-Term Sustainability. This is a stakeholder-driven effort that developed a regulatory framework to address legacy and ongoing salt and nitrate accumulation in the valley. The program works to ensure safe drinking water supplies, reduce salt and nitrate loading to protect beneficial uses, and implement long-term managed restoration of impaired water bodies. Next slide, please. So CV-SALT has developed a prioritized nitrate control program to address areas in our region where communities have been most heavily impacted by nitrate pollution. In priority 1 areas, permittees are working to provide drinking water to affected communities in conjunction with nitrate reduction efforts. Meanwhile, and that drinking water effort involves substantial outreach, as well as the development and implementation of expansive drinking water well sampling programs. Meanwhile, in the Irrigated Lands program, we've developed a monitoring effort that to date has resulted in the sampling of about 12,000 drinking water wells on farms. So the racial equity goal for the CV-SALT program is to integrate these 2 projects. This represents a significant effort to synthesize the large amount of data that's available between the 2 programs, which were enacted at different times with differing requirements, all with the goal of helping to ensure that persons with nitrate contaminated wells are provided safe alternative drinking water. Click, please. So this is the top priority program or project for the program. Program staff will also be supporting the development and evaluation of management zone implementation plans and the associated permit revisions. Those duties, of course, will be shared by Irrigated Lands, Confined Animals, and Waste Discharged to Land program staff, along with others. Next slide, please. So Leah is up next to discuss the water quality certifications program.
Thank you, Sue. Good afternoon, Chair Bradford, Vice Chair Kadara, and members of the board. My name is Leah Jones. I'm an environmental scientist in the Sacramento office, Mercury Program and Basin Planning Unit. I've been at the board just since March of 2021, so I'm really excited to be here in person with you guys today. I'll start with the Water Quality Certifications Program, which regulates the removal or placement of materials in wetlands and waterways of the state. The program protects all waters, but especially wetlands, riparian areas, and headwaters, because these water bodies have a high resource value, are vulnerable to filling, and are not systematically protected by other programs. Projects regulated by this program generally require a permit from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which requires a state certification issued pursuant to Section 401 of the Clean Water Act. These certifications have enforceable provisions to ensure that the projects meet state water quality requirements. The Water Quality Certifications Program is also responsible for implementing the state and federal wetlands no net loss policies and the state dredge and fill procedures. Next slide, please. For the Water Quality Certifications Program, racial equity goals are geared toward making a somewhat confusing regulatory process more transparent. The program will work with public participation specialists to produce a clear process flow chart in relevant and plain languages to increase the transparency of the permitting process. Program staff will also make sure that more people are engaged in the certification process by enhancing the noticing of pending projects. This enhanced noticing may include, but will not be limited to, engaging with tribes beyond currently applicable legal requirements, referencing CalEnviroScreen or a similar tool to better understand cumulative environmental burdens faced by the communities in which the development subject to the certification will be occurring, and translating notices into languages spoken by stakeholders. Click, please. The development of this process flowchart informational modules will be considered a priority project, while the enhanced noticing will be part of the core regulatory work associated with issuing certifications. In addition, the Water Quality Certifications Program will be developing expertise implementing the General Order for Electric Utility Operations and Maintenance Activities related to wildfire mitigation. And in addition to that, they will be pursuing additional opportunities for staff training and development. The latter of these is considered a priority project for this unit because there have been a large amount of significant regulatory changes in this program area that will require training and development above and beyond that level of training and education given in an average year. Next slide, please. Next is the Surface Water Ambient Monitoring Program, or SWAMP, which was created to coordinate all surface water quality monitoring conducted by the state and regional water boards. The SWAMP program conducts water quality monitoring directly and through collaborative partnerships and provides numerous reports, fact sheets, and tools, all designed to support water resource management in California. SWAMP staff assess overall water quality status and trends, evaluate beneficial use protections, identify water quality problems and potential sources of impairment, evaluate the effectiveness of water board water quality improvement policies, and coordinate internal and external monitoring efforts. Next slide, please. The SWAMP program is typically guided by a work plan that is developed in collaboration with State Water Board. The first racial equity goal in this program seeks to incorporate community voices in the development of that work plan by developing a process to solicit input from the community on monitoring priorities. This is particularly important because many BIPOC and environmental justice communities within the Central Valley are reliant on natural swimming places for recreational opportunities. And apologies, I don't know if that was defined earlier, but BIPOC is Black, Indigenous People of Color. I think it might be said again. Particularly in hot summer months, this is important, and our monitoring efforts can help inform these communities whether this water is safe or not. The next racial equity goal is to translate public-facing map tools into languages commonly spoken by visitors and create a video in multiple languages to explain how map tools can be used by the public. The translation process will be aided by language access guidance and assistance from State Water Board. Lastly, we propose to incorporate additional protections for at-risk staff, including women and people of color, as we revise standard operating procedures for the program. Keep in mind that in this program, unlike others, we have staff performing water quality monitoring at unregulated sites, which can present greater risks. Click, please. Soliciting input from communities and translating the map tools are considered priority projects for the program, and the enhanced protections and updated operating procedures is considered core work. Additional priority projects for SWAMP include supporting statewide efforts to monitor wildfire impacts and improving data management and operational procedures. Next slide, please. Now onto the mines program. The Central Valley Water Board regulates 106 mine sites with known or potential water quality impacts. This is a subset of the 47,000 abandoned mine sites with physical and/or environmental hazards identified throughout California by the Department of Conservation. Discharges of waste from these mine sites can have devastating effects on receiving waters and can significantly limit beneficial uses for miles downstream. The mines program oversees the discharge of mining waste from active and inactive mines. The goal of this program is to eliminate surface water and groundwater impacts from past mining operations and prevent future degradation of waters of the state. Next slide, please. The mines program, which does not have a dedicated fund to draw from to oversee or remediate legacy mine sites, works hard to prioritize those sites which present the greatest threat to water quality. As the racial equity goal for this program, we are proposing to add a consideration of environmental burdens faced by disadvantaged communities and tribes to the existing prioritization process. This effort to reduce This effort to reduce prioritization is the top priority project for the mines program. In addition, the program will be working to implement a revised water quality threat prioritization scheme and continue the financial assurance review initiative for the mine waste management units. Now on to Marisol. Next slide, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I will discuss the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, or I will now refer to as the NPDES program. Sometimes I like to say NPDS, so pardon me if I mispronounce it. The NPDES program is a federal program created by the Federal Clean Water Act that US EPA has delegated to the state of California. The program protects beneficial uses by regulating point source discharges to surface waters. Point sources regulated by the board primarily consist of wastewater treatment plants, along with a small number of industrial sources. Next slide, please. Like several other programs, the NPDES program has proposed a racial equity goal designed to increase engagement and transparency. Staff in the program will be developing an engagement process to broaden contact with tribal groups, which will include a review of existing mailing lists and the designation of a staff person to work with the regional tribal liaison and to attend tribal meetings. Click, please. This will become part of the NPDES program's priority project, which will both reevaluate prioritization matrices to ensure culturally relevant outreach is conducted in disadvantaged communities, and that will work to translate fact sheets into appropriate languages. The NPDES program is also proposing a priority project that will work to integrate CV salts requirements into NPDES permits and develop a salinity variance under the CV salt control program. Next slide, please. Next, I will discuss the land disposal program. The land disposal program regulates the land discharge of solid and liquid waste to prevent water quality impacts. This program protects groundwater and surface water quality from contaminants associated with landfills, liquid waste surface impoundments, and other waste contaminant units, ensures permits are kept up to date with applicable regulations, and implements timely enforcement where necessary. Next slide, please. Many landfills are located within communities already burdened by other environmental contaminants. The land disposal program proposes to take a community's CalEnviroScreen score into consideration as it works to prioritize permit revisions. In addition, the program will be developing fact sheets that will help explain the focus of potential board actions within the affected communities. Click, please. Both of these are set to become the program's priority projects for the fiscal year 23-24. Next slide.
Jean, if you could unmute Rebecca.
There you go, Rebecca.
Thank you, Jean. All right. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Bradford and members of the board. My name is Rebecca Asami, and I'm a senior engineering geologist working in one of the oil field units out of the Fresno office.
Jean, if you could put Rebecca on the screen. I think he has a display locked on Adriana. And Jean, I truly appreciate the juggling act that you're doing here.
No problem.
I second that. For this presentation, sorry. All right. For this presentation, my section begins with the stormwater program. The stormwater program implements construction, industrial, and municipal permits to regulate the discharge of pollutants in stormwater to waters of the U.S. The permits require implementation of best management practices, or BMPs, and other program elements and controls to minimize the discharge of pollutants. Board staff review monitoring and other program reports, conduct compliance inspections and audits, and conduct enforcement activities as needed. Next slide, please. Thank you. DACs, or disadvantaged communities, and BIPOC communities tend to have high Cal EnviroScreen scores and are often overburdened by the cumulative effects of pollution. These are also areas where industrial sites, the focus of most of the program's efforts, are located. Even though the stormwater program's focus is generally already within DACs and BIPOC communities, Cal EnviroScreen scores have not historically been used to help focus the work. The stormwater program proposes to develop a tool to help assess and prioritize investigations considering Cal EnviroScreen scores and related community burdens. In addition, the stormwater program will be committing to review outreach materials to ensure availability in languages spoken by affected communities. This is especially important because many dischargers regulated by the stormwater program struggle with compliance due to language access barriers. When appropriate, materials used to help dischargers understand the path to compliance, such as handouts, PowerPoints, web pages, should be available in multiple languages. Click, please. Thank you. Both of these goals are considered core work for the stormwater program. However, the program will use information considered as part of the new prioritization to conduct targeted inspections. In addition, the program proposes to work on the renewal of the region-wide municipal general permit, a huge effort that will impact most large municipalities in our region. Next slide. Thank you. Now I'm going to talk about the oil field program. Most California oil production occurs in the Central Valley. Formation water produced with oil, known as produced wastewater, comprises the largest volume of waste generated by oil production. Produced wastewater is typically saline and is disposed of by land application, aka ponds, or by underground injection. The oilfield program regulates oilfield waste discharges to ensure the protection of surface and groundwaters and reviews proposed aquifer exemption applications, UIC permits, and SB4 related groundwater monitoring programs to ensure activities are protective of water quality. Next slide. Thanks. The racial equity goals for the oilfield program include assessing sites in proximity to residential areas, along with reviewing Cal EnviroScreen scores to identify sites for program work prioritization, and increasing outreach to DACs and BIPOC communities, including hosting informational outreach meetings. Click. Thank you. Both of these will be considered the program's priority projects for the fiscal year 23-24. Next slide. Now I'm going to talk about the compliance and enforcement program. The State Water Resources Control Board and the 9 regional water quality control boards protect the waters of the state by ensuring compliance with clean water laws and taking enforcement actions when violations occur. The Compliance and Enforcement Program protects water quality by enforcing state and federal laws and policies, and by taking swift enforcement actions and conducting inspections, responding to complaints, identifying unpermitted sites, and applying technical expertise to ensure enforceable permits are protective of water quality. Next slide. Thank you. Can you click one more time, please? Thank you. Like other programs, the Compliance and Enforcement Program will reassess its prioritization effort using tools such as CalEnviroScreen. Can you click one more time? Thank you. It will also work to refine reporting to the board and the public on efforts with environmental justice communities by including a tally of high CalEnviroScreen score sites that have received formal enforcement in executive officers' reports. Both of these goals would be considered core work. As a priority project, the Compliance and Enforcement Program will work to enhance its engagement with disadvantaged and environmental justice communities as it works to deploy enforcement resources effectively. Lastly, the Compliance and Enforcement Program will continue its CV Salts compliance initiative to address non-compliance with the nitrate and salt control programs. Thank you very much. Now I'm going to pass it on to the next presenter, Selena.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the board. My name is Selena Cole. I work on the Delta Regional Monitoring Program in the Basin Planning Unit at Rancho Cordova. We're going to talk about the Delta program, and as soon as the slide's up, okay, great. The Delta program is unlike other board programs in that it was created out of what used to be known as the CalFed program. Referring to that's referring to a major state effort to provide for ecosystem health, water quality, water supply, and levee integrity in the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta. I feel like this is getting louder. It's transitioned to an effort to coordinate actions to ensure protection of Delta water quality and to implement the Central Valley Region Bay Delta Strategic Work Plan. A significant component of the Delta program's efforts include oversight and guidance for the Delta Regional Monitoring Program. Next slide, please. The Delta is home to many underserved communities that have large environmental burdens, from communities in economically disadvantaged areas of Stockton to communities in the Delta Islands and to Hmong subsistence fishers. The racial equity goals of the program are to increase participation with disproportionately burdened BIPOC communities impacted by HABs and nutrients. Propose adding EJ members to the Delta Regional Monitoring Program's Board of Directors or Steering Committee, and to use CalEnviroScreen and other vulnerability tools during analysis of Delta RMP data. These efforts will include continuing to develop collaborations and partnerships with citizen scientists and BIPOC communities and track the progress. Click, please. All of these are defined as priority projects for the Delta program. Next slide, please. In the Central Valley region, there are about 30,000 irrigated agricultural operations on approximately 6 million acres of land. The Irrigated Lands Regulatory Program, or ILRP, we like acronyms, regulates these operations to protect beneficial uses of surface water and groundwater. ILRP program staff provide oversight of coalition and grower activities and conduct compliance and outreach activities to maximize grower enrollment and compliance. Next slide, please. We've actually already covered the ILRP's racial equity goal, which it shares with the CV Salts program. Click, please. There's a couple of arrows there. This is considered the top priority project for the Irrigated Lands Regulatory Program, along with updates to the groundwater quality management plans and continued strategic engagement with socially disadvantaged growers within the UC Extension Small Farms Advisor. Nick and Sean, you might recall our outreach effort to Hmong growers in the Fresno area. ILRP plans to build on these efforts, and you'll be included in the development as members of the Agricultural Working Group. Next slide, please. Confined animal facilities are ranches where livestock are held and provided food for a significant portion of time. The goal of the Confined Animal Facilities Program is to ensure the human right to safe, clean, affordable, and accessible water by protecting waters potentially affected by discharges from confined animal facilities. Next slide. Of critical importance to the dairy program is the State Water Board's consideration of a petition to resolve outstanding legal issues related to the adoption of the 2013 Dairy General Order. This is expected to be highly controversial, and the racial equity goal for the Confined Animal Facilities Program is therefore to navigate this process while involving stakeholders at every step of the process and enabling them to provide meaningful engagement. Click, please. While this is the main priority project of the CAF program, there are several others. These other priority projects consist of CV salts implementation and enforcement, the review of design and post-construction reports for dairy digesters, which lessen air impacts of dairies, and to participate in the composting work group, sounds like a fun bunch, convened with guidance from the California Department of Food and Agriculture. Next slide, please. The Central Valley Regional Water Board's cannabis regulatory program regulates waste discharges associated with cannabis cultivation. The program works to increase enrollments in the statewide general order, to perform targeted enforcement in high-value watersheds, to conduct education and outreach to cultivators, and to coordinate with other agencies at the state and local level. Next slide, please. Our cannabis program staff have worked with an incredibly diverse group of cultivators trying to comply with the requirements of this new regulatory program. However, many of the outreach materials and education modules are only provided in English. So the racial equity goal for this program, much like others, is to translate important information, including the implementation of best management practices, into languages other than English to increase awareness of the regulatory program among the BIPOC communities. This will be useful not only in counties where cultivation is legal, but it may also help reduce impacts even where cannabis cultivation is not authorized. Click, please. This is a primary priority project for the cannabis program. The cannabis program will also embark on targeted enforcement efforts to increase enrollment of legal cultivation sites and will reassess workflow should additional resources be allocated to this program. Next slide, please. There are approximately 16 million acres of federal and non-federal forest lands within the Central Valley region. The Forest Activities Program seeks to prevent impacts to surface waters due to discharges of pollutants related to forest land management, including sediment, petroleum products, pesticides and herbicides, and other waste materials. Next slide, please. Additional functionality has been added to CalEnviroscreen, and the Forest Activities Program will commit to both training its staff on the use of CalEnviroscreen and to use CalEnviroscreen and related vulnerability tools in prioritizing work near vulnerable communities. Click, please. Both actions are considered core work by the Forest Activities Program. Priority projects will include a timber general order compliance improvement project, conducting oversight for utility companies engaged in vegetation management, implementation of the new federal non-point source permit, which is proposed for adoption in the first half of next year, 2023. Implementation of the Wildfire and Forest Resilience Action Plan, and completion of the Pesticides Lab Methodology Development Project. This concludes my section. I'll pass it over to Sid.
Thank you, Selena. Good afternoon, Chair Bradford and member of the board. My name is Sid Sivalia. I'm a water resource control engineer in the site cleanup unit at Region 5 Sacramento, and I've been with the regional board for 15 years. And today I'll be presenting an overview of 3 programs: the non-point source program, the site cleanup program, and the underground storage tanks program. So the first up is the non-point source program. Non-point source pollution is the leading cause of water quality impairments in California. Leveraging limited grant funds, the non-point source program works to restore waters impacted by NPS pollution and to protect unimpaired water bodies by assessing problem sources and implementing management programs. Next slide, please. So the blueprint for the non-point source program is the 5-year plan. It's a comprehensive document prepared in collaboration with the State Water Board and the other regional boards that describes the funding priorities for the coming years. The program's racial equity goal for the NPS program is to advocate for the prioritization of implementation efforts in communities facing racial equity and environmental justice concerns. The State Board has signaled that it will be heading in this direction, but we will strongly continue to support this type of prioritization. Click. So that support will be one of the priority projects for the NPS program, along with the implementation of projects contained in the current 5-year plan. Next slide, please. So the next program is the site cleanup program. The site cleanup or SCP program regulates and oversees the investigation and cleanup of contaminated sites. Staff overseeing investigation and cleanup actions at sites that have been impacted by releases of pollutants to soil, soil gas, groundwater, surface water, sediments, and indoor air. Site cleanup sites include large industrial facilities, military bases, oil refineries, factories, and smaller facilities such as dry cleaners and plating shops. Many properties are in urban areas, and environmental justice communities and cleanup often results in contaminant removal, reduced impact to water, and economic growth. Next slide. So it is critical that communities have a voice in the board's decision-making around contaminated sites. Therefore, the site cleanup program will develop revisions to public outreach guidelines to incorporate equitable, culturally relevant community outreach to promote meaningful civil engagement from impacted communities. The program will also train staff on the availability and use of GeoTracker tools and layers presenting CalEnviroScreen scores and demographics of communities surrounding these site cleanup sites. Click, please. The first of these 2 goals will become a priority project, while the second of these 2 goals will be absorbed into core work for the program. Additional priority projects will consist of addressing work at already prioritized cleanup cases and continuing to develop board expertise on emerging contaminants, contaminants of emerging concerns such as 1,2,3 TCP and PFAS. Next slide, please. So the next program is the Underground Storage Tank or UST program. The UST and Above Ground Storage or AST program address leak prevention, provides oversight of leaking underground tank cleanups, and facilitates reimbursement to responsible parties conducting cleanup. The program protects the public and the environment from the effects of unauthorized releases from USDs through the investigation and mitigation of the released constituents. Next slide. Just like the site cleanup program, the USD program will use new tools such as Cal EnviroScreen to consider environmental burdens when prioritizing cases and will more heavily involve communities in decision-making around site remediation proposals. Click. Both of these will become priority projects for fiscal year 2023-24. And with that, our tour through the water quality program is at an end, and I will turn the presentation back over to Patrick.
And again, my thanks go out to the racial equity team. It's often said that, you know, the growth happens outside of your comfort zone. I think it happened for every member of the team as well as the program managers that they dealt with, because this is not a usual thing that you're incorporating into your work plans. And having a conversation across programs, I think, was really beneficial. I know the feedback from the program managers was resoundingly positive for the conversations they had with the members of this team, including Sue, who is a program manager herself, and talked with other program managers about the development of these goals. And so really my thanks go out to the team and to the program managers who helped put this presentation together. I will make one final note in that Board Member Kadara provided a lot of input on the development of the priority projects. And so what you have in front of you is a red line strikeout of some language to strengthen the priority projects that were proposed by Board Member Kadara, Vice Chair Kadara. And we're certainly that no formal action will be taken on the priority projects. That's just kind of incorporating your feedback. But we are proposing that the board adopt the racial equity resolution here this afternoon. And with that, any questions?
If you can hear me, I just wanted to say a few words before everybody begins, if that's okay, Chair Member Bradford.
Of course.
I just want to say how proud I am of our team. I think this is such a important initiative, and it just really makes me so proud listening to all the work that went into this. And I know it took a long time, but it is that important. And it's showing that our board takes this very seriously. We understand the importance of equity, diversity, and inclusion, and putting pen to paper and putting it into policy is how you take an idea and put into action. And I am just grateful to everyone involved, and of course to Denise, who's always been a champion and leads the way. And I just wanted to say my sentiments in this virtual world that I'm here. I don't know when I get cut off or be part of the dialogue with everyone, but I just want to be able to say that. I was just in awe listening to everyone. Thank you all.
Well, I'm very excited about the racial equity resolution, the programs and your projects, the projects that have been brought forth. A great job, well done by the whole team. And as Patrick said, I had a few comments, but mine was just wordsmithing, trying to make sure that the language that was put here was not flowery language that, you know, consider, you know, let it be, do it, you know, determine, identify, and just stronger action that shows it's not just talk, but it is going to be something that's going to be moved forward in a strong position that racial equity will take place on all of the projects that are here before this board. So I commend the work that you've done, and looking forward to the progress that's going to be made in this effort. It's a long time coming, and I'm glad we're at this point. I'm glad the state led the way in establishing their resolution, and now we're at this point. And I think we're on our way to doing a great job to display racial equity, which is Doesn't necessarily mean this is where we should be, but this is where we are, and I'm glad we're at this place and taking this action at this time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Gadar. I'll also add, as a component of the racial equity resolution, we propose to convene an accountability team that will be periodically meeting with the program managers and reporting back to this board at part of the August report back cycle to see how we're doing, to make sure that we are kind of making meaningful progress program by program here. I will certainly invite members of this team to reapply, except for you, Sid, because I do want to take the opportunity to publicly congratulate you on your promotion. Sid will be leaving the regional board, one of those vacancies that we'll be working to fill, but it's for a good reason. Congratulations.
I'm almost reluctant to clap for somebody leaving the board right now, but congratulations.
Thank you, board member.
I'll also add Rebecca was promoted as well during the pendency of this, so pretty good success rate here.
Great. Why don't you go ahead, Elena?
I just want to say I really appreciate the level of outreach and engagement. It's not only consistent with the requirements of AB 2108, but it goes above and beyond the legal requirements, which is something I'm really proud to see. This resolution has been a very good level of transparency with how each program works, and I also noticed that you guys were also providing flow charts, translation services, and public engagement meetings, and this really does provide opportunities for communities to participate in a meaningful way and be a part of decisions that directly affect them. And it strengthens the goal of clean, safe, affordable drinking water for all, regardless of race. And that's making me really excited because I can't wait to see the fruit that comes out from integrating all these principles into our priority projects.
Yeah, I hate to be repetitive, but I'm kind of overwhelmed by how much work has gone into this and how much thought has gone into it. It's very impressive. I mean, I think the whole program for racial equity is probably overdue. It certainly is overdue, but it's amazing for me to see a resolution before the board right now that hasn't been voted on even, and you guys have already got an action plan in place for next year. So that's pretty awesome. And I do hope there's a way to make the public aware of this initiative as part of your outreach. I'm sure they will become aware, at least the involved members of the community. But if there's some way to make a broader outreach and publicize this effort, I think that would be worthwhile. So thank you, everybody. Very proud as well of the work you guys have done.
Mark, I was just waiting for you to call us out, but it looks like we got to jump in ourselves. So before you pass on to another item, I would like to take this opportunity also to chime in. This is definitely a significant project for the community. The racial equity program is one that I think that it will change lives. It will change our community for the better. And I, for one, definitely it hits home for sure. And the resolution itself, it's so thorough and hits so many points. And it's kind of hard to pinpoint all of them, because it's very thorough. And I just want to say my sincere thank you to the team and whoever that is involved of making this possible and being very detailed and cover so many of the areas. So it's phenomenal work. And I think that the people of color, especially, that come to see this type of resolution, this type of program, will be very thrilled and happy. And I'm one of them. And I don't want to shift the sentimental, but I do want to ask a couple questions if that's okay. There's a lot of great thing on there. I'm just wondering, do we hire any additional help to run these programs?
Hopefully.
Hopefully, okay.
Hopefully. So I will mention that there is a parallel effort going on at the State Water Board for the Racial Equity Work Plan. And because ultimately the way the financial accounting work is the State Water Board is kind of at the forefront for asking for positions. I know it's tough to ask for positions right now. I know they will be as part of their implementation of their work goal with a 25 billion projected kind of state budget deficit. It's hard to ask for those positions, so we're not counting on anything. All of this will be handled with internal resources currently, but I know that the objective is to try and get more resources to further this work, both at the state board level and at the regional board level.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited also to touch on the translation and the outreach, the engagement. I think that's huge because at the end of the day, we could have all the great program, but we cannot engage or outreach to the folks that need it most. Then it's kind of like pointless. But it just blows my mind how we're gonna roll this out and really help out the community. So thank you so much for all that you do for all of us. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Again, thanks everybody that's been involved in this. I guess I have one question. If we are, again, at the forefront of this as far as the other boards go, or is there some overlap with the other boards?
There's a lot of overlap. I think all other boards are taking it in different directions, I suppose. I know at least one board adopted something, essentially incorporated it into their strategic planning effort, and then they're going to do the work plan. There are other regions that essentially adopted a racial equity resolution that parallels the state resolution. So everybody's doing it in a slightly different way. I think ours is certainly the most action oriented and kind of positions ourselves. Again, it really isn't a wholesale repositioning of the water quality program work that we're doing, because a lot of this we are already doing. But, this puts a finer point on it. This kind of draws specific attention to it. And it's really, you hear the adage that you can't regulate what you can't count, and you can't manage what you can't count. This actually puts it on the program managers to really say, well, what are we specifically doing in black and white as we develop our work plans in this area? So that's changed a little bit. Developing these type of metrics, developing, black and white flow charts that say this is what we're doing, really is what this has done to our programs, what it will do, and enhance those efforts in terms of planning to adapt to these needs. And to be honest, one of the things I have to thank this team for is to kind of bridging the gap between the program managers and having these conversations and talking about things like, what does BIPOC mean? What are we talking about with these racial equity goals? Oh, we do that, but let's start counting that. Is what I've heard a lot from the program managers. And you start counting it, then you start understanding where the deficiencies are, where you can adjust in future years. So I think that was a really useful part of this exercise as we kind of work to develop this resolution.
Yeah, and using that Cal EnviroScreen tool effectively, it's such a powerful tool. It's good to see that rolled into this approach.
And honestly, I've been tracking EnviroScreen since 1.0, and OEHA has been really, really instrumental in developing this tool in a way that I remember the first version of EnviroScreen. It really said in huge kind of red letters at the intro page, "Do not use this for regulatory purposes. We are really working on refining this thing. It is a blunt instrument right now." But through the successive iterations, it's gotten to the point where when you talk about 2108, it actually calls out EnviroScreen in the legislation as something that has finally gotten to the stage where you can start using it for prioritization. Now, there's still some kinks there. There's still some things that are, that need to be worked out. And, 21 environmental metrics is a lot. It's not all of them. There's a ton more census tracts. There's a lot of variability that you can see even in a census tract between kind of rich and poor or BIPOC, non-BIPOC. So all of those are being worked out. But I mean, it's extraordinary how much that tool has progressed, and the stewardship of that tool by OEHA is really something special.
I just had one other comment. I know that when I spoke at the WQCC in 2021, we were celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Clean Water Act. And, what do we want to see happen for the next 50 years? And I think this is a good foundation for the next 50 years to deal with the racial equity or inequity that has been within the disadvantaged communities, the tribal communities. So this opportunity is here, but the most important thing is the action that's behind it, that it is effective and it does what the planning calls for. So again, I'm really appreciative and commend the staff and the team that put all of the work into this document. Now let's see it get implemented and serve the needs of those disadvantaged communities that have had to do without the quality water and all of the things that, are so important to every other community. So thank you all very much for this.
Any other comments? Okay, Mindy, has there been any interested persons wishing to comment on this item?
No.
No. Okay.
Well, Mark, I actually want to take this opportunity to say thanks to Denise as well, because she been pushed for this before my time. So thank you for the work prior to my time here. So appreciate that work.
You're welcome. I serve in a capacity to represent the disadvantaged communities, and so that's what I'm here to do.
And I will add my thanks go out to you, the board. Honestly, when I started with this organization, about 16, 17 years ago, different administration, I don't think the board at the time would have authorized me, the executive team, program managers, and staff to spend as much resources and time and energy on this endeavor. It shows a lot about how far this state has come. And bipartisan. I don't think it's necessarily a measure of partisanship or anything like that. It really is a deeper understanding of some of the legacy issues that we work with, particularly here in the Central Valley. So, frankly, I want to give my thanks to you to letting me spend my time doing this, and letting the managers spend their time doing this. The state board certainly thinks it's a priority. The governor thinks it's a priority, and the fact that you think it's a priority too is really valuable and sends a very positive message to everybody at the board.
Yes, I feel like we can't celebrate the diversity of this state if we don't fix some of these issues. And this is a big step in the right direction. So I guess, do you want to make a recommendation?
My recommendation is to move forward with the resolution.
Thought you might say that. So all we need to do is have a motion.
Denise, you want to?
Denise. Yeah.
Off the resolution.
I don't think your mic's on.
Oh,
it doesn't matter.
Okay, I move that we adopt the racial equity resolution. And what is the consideration? Yeah, that we adopt the regional racial equity resolution and the program priority projects.
I second that.
With the late revisions, right?
Yes, with the late revisions.
I second that.
Okay, Denise motioned and Sean has seconded. So Mindy, can you take the roll?
Board Member Yang,
Aye.
Board Member Aptis,
Yes.
Board Member Brar,
Yes.
Board Member Lee Reader,
Aye.
Vice Chair Kadara,
Yes.
and Chair Bradford.
Yes. So thanks, everybody. That was a great agenda item. I feel like we accomplished something there today. Deserved. Okay. Let's see. Got 3:15. Why don't we take another short break? And then we only have one more agenda item today, which will be Soapy giving a little report on the Pacific Watershed Stewardship Council. Thank you.
We just have Sophie.
Yeah, that's all. Okay, I think we're about ready to get started again. Okay, the last agenda item for the day is a report on the Pacific Watershed Stewardship Council. This is an informational item only. No action will be taken, although the board may ask questions and provide direction to staff following the presentation by Sophie Mulholland. Interested persons will be allowed 3 minutes each to address the board. And I think we're ready to roll. Welcome, Sophie. No.
Bob is helping.
I will talk in just one second, but I also want to introduce Erin Healy, who's doing the heavy lifting for me today by doing this. And she's going to be doing most of the presentation. She's the executive director. And we couldn't do the work we do without her. I'll tell you, really in fabulous hands. So I'm just going to start out for the first couple minutes. First of all, I am Sophie Mulholland. I was once on the board of the Regional Water Quality Control Board. And for the last 15 years, you've had me be your representative on the Stewardship Council. So it's been a really interesting thing, and we're going to talk about it. I don't know how many of the board members are familiar with the Stewardship Council because we haven't done a report due to COVID for quite a while. So hopefully this will be of interest to you. And I think that having a representation from the water perspective has been really important. So going to the next slide, please. This is a mission of the Stewardship Council to protect and enhance 140,000 acres of PG&E's watershed lands and uses, and to invest in efforts to improve the lives of young Californians through connections with the outdoors. And behind that 140,000 acres was 140,000 acres of land belonging to PG&E that, as a result of a legal decision, was decided to go back to the people of California. So getting 140,000 acres into the people of California's hands has been a challenge you can imagine. It's been incredible. We've had an amazing staff that's been able to do it. Next. The Stewardship Council is made up of 17 agencies. So one of the rules was that all our decisions had to be made with consensus. Now, all of you sit on one board, and you know from my time here anyway, reaching consensus just on this board took a lot of discussion. Well, you take 17 agencies with all of their boards, for us to be able to have accomplished anything is absolutely incredible. And Erin just found out right during that break that we have only one last land deal to close. So Erin, how many have we done altogether?
Well, the land donations, this will be 40, it'll be at the end, and then we'll, 96 total land transactions.
So it's a lot of land transactions. So we're pretty excited. Erin's really carrying the ball, and we're in our dissolution phase as we speak. Next slide, please. So I already said who I was, and I've been on the board since you sent me there in 2007. And I've served as chair of the Watershed Planning Committee, vice president, and now I've been appointed to be the chair for dissolution. And I'm very grateful for Patrick for saying, yes, we're sending you back again. And I think it would have been a sort of a hard thing for somebody else to step in at this very end point and go, why am I here? So at this point, I'd like to give the mic to Erin, who is wonderful to come with her broken foot and still be here to present, and we're really grateful. Oh, sorry.
Hopefully that last land deal wasn't that rough.
No, actually, this was an old injury. because I was silly and played a lot of soccer as a kid. Anyway, my name is Aaron Healy, and I work for the Stewardship Council. And the Stewardship Council is a nonprofit organization. It was actually born from the 2001 bankruptcy of PG&E. And I know I have to be more specific about that. And so in 2003, it was a settlement stipulation that required kind of some oversight by a nonprofit and development of nonprofit.
If you'd like to present from one of the chairs, totally cool to do that as well.
Thank you, though.
Just making sure.
Totally appreciate that. And I actually zip around with this thing pretty good. Anyway, so, but as a result, they, PG&E and the regulators provided the Stewardship Council with $100 million to get all this land transaction work done, and said, okay, you can do that in 10 years. And, just that was silly. Do we have okay, great. Because it takes 96 land transactions. Each land transaction takes at least 2 years to get through with all the regulatory issues that we have to deal with. 140,000 acres of land is a lot. And it's 1,000 parcels in 22 counties in 9 watersheds. So it's a really lot of really complicated land transactions. Okay, next slide, please. So we have 2 kind of groups of folks that we talk about. Our fee title donees, because 40,000 of these acres will be donated actually to tribes, counties, nonprofits, and to state and federal agencies. Today, we got our almost final land transaction closed escrow for property that was donated to CAL FIRE. And yesterday we had another property that closed escrow for CAL FIRE. We have 1 more land donation to do, and then everything else, 13 more, will be all conservation easements. So every piece of property has to have a conservation easement laid on it, conveyed, which is a big production. It's a big deal, because whether there's a property that PG&E either retains, they keep, and we have a conservation easement on it, or we essentially are brokering the donation of PG&E's property to those agencies that you see on the screen. And some of the proudest moments I've had, honestly, were when we went to a celebration from the Pit River Tribe, when we provided them back, or got them back their tribal property, and they did a big kind of powwow, and we got to go, and it was like super cool and very, very emotional. Anyway, so our final land donation will be completed in Q1 of 23, and then 13 more conservation easements we will convey on all the property that PG&E has kept, because they had to keep things because they've got hydro zones, and all, they own the water and the infrastructure, and all that is overseen by FERC and CPUC. So anyway, so that's those are our fee title donees in front of you, and then the next slide we'll show you all the land trusts, and you'll see a couple of state agencies up there who hold conservation easements on the property. So all the properties have conservation easements on them, because one of the things that we have to do is ensure the protection of all that property. So land trusts, throughout California hold conservation easements, and Sierra Nevada Conservancy actually holds all the conservation easements, and they're a different term, but for the Forest Service got 10 land donations as well. Next slide, please. So the progress that we've made, our board had to adopt all the land conservation and conveyance plans. There were 96 of them, and it was a big process. Went out, publicly, and we solicited folks that were going to want to be fee title donees. We wanted to hold conservation easements. It was all a public process. And then all this process then goes through the CPUC, and for all the retained property that PG&E is going to keep has to go through FERC as well. Right now we've closed, and I'm going to be super happy about this. We closed escrow on 81 land transactions, because this week, because it's so dynamic, this week we closed 2. So we will actually we have 39 land donations completed, 1 more. We effectuate and transfer the placement of conservation easements on all the rest of the properties, which will be in 2023, only 14 remaining. And so all that property will be, that 140,000 acres will be protected and monitored by all those easement holders. Next. And by the way, we use some of that money that we got to give endowment so that there will be perpetual monitoring on that property. So all those easement holders get money so that they can invest it and use the proceeds of that investment to then pay for the ongoing monitoring and enforcement of those conservation easements. So we are anticipating our final land donation, as I said, in Q1 of 23, and then at the end of 2023, we will have our final conservation easement placed, and we will dissolve the Stewardship Council. I'm going to say that like really proudly, because in the settlement and stipulation, there was a contemplation of the dissolution of this nonprofit, because we will have, and I hate to use this thing, but mission completion. We will have completed the mission of the Stewardship Council at the end of 2023 by protecting all that property and ensuring 40,000 acres were donated to those fee donees, those entities that I showed you. In 2024, a small group of board officers are going to remain just to ensure that the dissolution goes correctly. You know, there's a little bit of stuff that needs to happen, and what I'm begging this board to do is to support Sophie's continued just a little bit of her time in 2024 to help us to ensure that the dissolution of a nonprofit, which is like a big deal, goes smoothly, and that we have a few very key board members, and she's a very key board officer, remain for, you know, to help us ensure that it's a clean dissolution. Okay, next one. So wanted to talk a little bit also about what we did with some of the other money. About $13.7 million we've awarded to projects throughout the watershed project land for all kinds of things. You know, we do habitat restoration, cultural resource protection, recreational improvements like trails. We just had a competitive round of proposals funded in 22, and we'll have some more in 23. So we'll be up near the $15 million range of funding those projects on the protected properties. Next. We also took 30 million of that $100 million and we parked it with a youth investment program to ensure that there was an ongoing, when we left, youth program. Justice Outside, which is an incredible youth organization, has taken the reins. We gave them about a little bit less than $11 million. They parlayed it into 10 years of really incredible grants to tons of grantees in the Bay Area to get young folks on that property. Next slide, please. I probably just already said what I just said, but that's okay. So in 22, the last year of the money that was left that we gave them, 23 organizations got $668,000. It's their final granting cycle. They'll, at the end of 22, they'll have completed their major grant agreement with us. And they're going to provide us with a end of the program report, which we'll incorporate into ours. We also did a really cool thing. We allocated $5 million to what's called Sky Mountain Camp, to San Joaquin County Office of Education, to purchase an old science camp. It's actually, it was old religious camp that they turned it into a science camp for kids in San Joaquin County who most of them have never seen snow before. And then they have them go to, and there's dorms and a big kitchen, and it overlooks a beautiful lake valley out in the Sierras. And we gave them $5 million. Half of it went to buy all the infrastructure and the actual buildings from the operator that was there. Because the property actually was donated to San Joaquin County Office of Education, but the buildings they purchased, and then about $2.5 million to upgrade it to ADA standards because kids were going to be there. So we got to go to Sky Mountain in October, and it's just a fantastic place. They had an art camp there when we were there, and kids from San Joaquin County were doing art, on the lawn overlooking this incredible place. So anyway, and they got to stay in dorms and overnight and stuff. Anyway, this science camp was a big legacy project for our board, and we're super proud to, provide this kind of opportunity for young people, especially in San Joaquin County, because, I worked in Stockton for a long time, and I know there's a lot of folks that are, disadvantaged. They don't get to go out to the Sierra, spend the night in the dorm with other kids, or go out to the mountains. So really, really super cool, moving experience. Next one. So I want to just kind of wrap it up to say, we really appreciate the fact that this board has supported a board member on the Stewardship Council board. Very, very important to have her perspective and your perspective. And we really just, want to say thank you, and also to hope that you will be generous enough to allow her to continue to close up and dissolve this organization. It's done such great work, and I think you should be proud of what she's done as well. So thank you so much. Any questions?
Thank you. That was a really good summary of what you guys have been up to. It's an amazing amount of property, a lot of people and players involved, agencies. I don't know how you how you get through some of the days that you must have to get through with that many people involved. But especially getting the kids out to these lands seems so important. When my kids were in grammar school here, some of their friends had never even been to the snow. And living in Sacramento, that seemed crazy. Some of them had never been to the ocean. So getting them out of their backyard and getting out to see the real world is a big step, I think, for a lot of those folks. So thank you, and I'm completely on board with supporting SOPI to see the dissolution of the Stewardship Council.
Sounds sad and also happy.
I know,
all at the same
it's
time.
like, well, I don't know, it's kind of probably a mixed blessing, but you got the job done, so that's what counts.
That's right.
So thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate you coming forward. I absolutely appreciate SOPI coming forward. I will note that it was actually one of my first board meetings back in 2007 when we had SOPI's appointment there. Francis McChesney was advising the board at the time and said this is a fantastic opportunity for the board and the board to extend its voice to a project that will do the right thing. I know there certainly was some contention about how the settlement was set up, but certainly the Stewardship Council and what it has done is kind of beyond reproach. I mean, it really embodies the best, and certainly, it wasn't talked about in terms of racial equity or environmental justice at the time, but absolutely it was front and center, helping disadvantaged communities, helping underserved youth come out there and frankly doing the right thing with a lot of tribal communities, which I empathize with you in that, through certainly no fault of their own, I know negotiating those and understanding the additional legal requirements for dealing with sovereign nations and government to government coordination on those type of efforts is extraordinary. Is it a whole added layers of complexity to those land transactions? So appreciate you taking that on and the council taking that on. And it's really, kind of due to the complexity of some of those transactions that when SOPI came forward and said, can we re-up me there? Without hesitation, I said, yes. You've been so involved in this, since day one. It would seem right to have you tend this as it winds down, as the mission is completed.
That's been about 15 years or so, right? So,
Yeah, 15 years. I mean, the Stewardship Council has been doing this for almost 20, in 2004 we began. So, yeah.
but the great part is, as Patrick said, you're dealing with racial equity before it was the slogan to do for the sovereign nations and for the youth, and just preserving the land, conserving it. It's very critical at this time. So really excited about all the work that you've done. The youth, you're setting up a new generation of environmental stewards. And I remember sharing that with you and some of the things we were doing down in the southern part of Tulare. But the youth are the ones that are going to be running the show in the next 10, 20 years. So we have to prepare them. And so all that you've done there and working with the tribal population, I think is enormous. I mean, that's that's the position the state has now, to engage them, to go back to some of the old practices and make things right and make things better. So all those opportunities, you had a chance to do a lot of other things with that money, but you chose the right thing, and it's making a difference. And so we really appreciate it. And as Patrick said, yeah, we'd like for you to finish the dissolution. There's no one else that should take that over. You've done the job, so let's have you finish it. Yeah,
Great, thank you.
very happy and thankful.
And for what it's worth, we did double check. We can absolutely keep paying the travel, Sophie's travel and things like that. You know, and I know there's been some changes in the financial stuff, but no hesitation there. We make sure all those I's were dotted and T's were crossed. So
Job well done.
Thank you, appreciate it.
I should say that, you know, with COVID, it's just like you're not meeting. I've been a cheap date for the last 3 years because we've been doing it all virtually. But I'm still very appreciative to be able to finalize what we're finalizing.
Glad you can make it to this meeting in person. I guess we'll see you tonight at the party. That'll be great. And I'd like to get a copy of your presentation. I was scribbling as fast as I could, but I think I missed some information. So that was a good summary.
If you could send out to all the board, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. Mindy, were there any interested parties that wanted to comment on this one?
No.
That concludes our meeting for the day then, so we'll adjourn. And we'll be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock. 10 o'clock tomorrow, yeah.
at 10 o'clock tomorrow, and the board will adjourn for a holiday party. No board business will be discussed. So I'm sure everybody's aware of that. Just a social gathering. So
good. And it's going to start raining in about an hour, so just FYI.
Before it starts.
All right, thanks, everybody.